Okay, so this is take 2 of flying circuits in the F16 Viper. First time it didn't record. We're here at Mount Pleasant in the Falkland Islands. The F16 is not the easiest aircraft to fly circuits and approaches in. So to the end, to be honest, I'd actually recommend doing this kind of thing in a training aircraft. On the RAF, we generally flew fast jet circuits at 1,000 feet, and that's what I would use for the trainers. For the F16, it flies a little bit faster, and it wants to fly a little bit higher. It's fairly draggy around the finals turn, so you fly at 1,500 feet, which will put you slightly wider than a 1,000 foot circuit and other jets. But your cues are very similar, where you're running the wingtip rail down the runway and that kind of thing. And 45 degrees turn in for your finals turn. But we'll fly at 1,500 feet. A few things we'll set up in the cockpit just because we're going to practice. I would recommend this kind of exercise. Give yourself something to aim for, give yourself speeds and heights to aim for, critique yourself, be honest, and pick something to improve on each circuit, and then improve that before you go around next time. We'll take the runway here. We're on runway 28 at Mount Pleasant. We're going to set our cockpit up just to practice circuits. So the airfield's at a fairly low, but it's an elevation of 220 feet. I'm going to set to the QFE, so I'm going to set my altimeter to 0, so it reads 0. Otherwise, you would just set that to your QNH, have that at airfield elevation, and then you'd add 1,500 feet to that to know what your circuit altitude is going to be like. I got the TACAN on. I've also got my course bar there set to the runway heading. So runway heading is 282, and the reciprocal is going to be 102, which we're going to want for the downwind heading. But we're going to try and fly the visual features, or pick out a visual feature, and that will allow us to hopefully improve our circuits as we practice. I'll get airborne and I'll reduce this fuel down a little bit. We're at 4,700, and I'll join you as we come back towards the airfield to join the circuit and practice some circuits. Okay, so we're down to 2,600 pounds. We're just coming back towards the airfield here. We're at a circuit altitude, got to hold 300 knots, so we'll just do an overhead join rather than running a brake. I'll show you running a brake more JG53 styly later. We want to fly 1,500 feet. We need to be less than 300 knots to lower the gear. But we want to be ending up sort of downwind at about 220 to 240, and then the end of downwind where we tip finals around about the 200 to 180 mark when we tip in finals. As far as tipping in finals goes, we've got around about 8 knots of headwind on the ground, so maybe 15 knots of headwinds up in the air. So we're looking for a 45 degree cue where we're looking back. And probably the back of the wing looks to be pointing at the threshold. Well, the other way to do it is once you think you're abeam your threshold, look forward 45 degrees, and that'll give you a point that you kind of want to roll out on. If the wind's stronger, then you want to tip in earlier. If the wind is lighter, you want to tip in later. The F16 is pretty slick, doesn't need a lot of power to hold the speed, so I'll throttle right back to sort of 80% here to hold 300. So I got an idle air brake into the turn. Remember, our downwind heading was 102, but we're going to look for a couple of features to help us, and then we can adjust that as we practice our circuits. So turning downwind, less than 300, gear travels. I'm looking at these set of sort of two legs with a little tiny one behind it here, and I'm going to kind of point towards that initially, see how that works. So that should be my rollout heading. A little bit fast at the moment and a little bit high, so let's adjust that. Getting towards a beam the threshold, so I look 45 degrees, somewhere down there I want to be turning in a beam. Gears down, 3 greens. So somewhere like that. Turn in, you're on the flight path mark, your aircraft symbol there to be around about 4 degrees nose down. We want to roll out at 400 feet, we're starting at 1500, so we need to be losing about 1100 feet in the turn, so 550 feet halfway round. So a little bit high. So if I'm high, I'm going to take power off, lower that flight path marker. I'm a little bit fast, so I'm going to increase back pressure on the stick and pull the staple up to the flight path marker in effect. And I want the flight path marker sitting in the top of the AOA staple. Okay, now you see the dotted line, that's our 2 degree line. We want that at our touchdown point. We want our flight path marker eventually there as well. And we want the flight path marker in the middle of the staple. So I need to come back on the stick to increase my AOA. And you can see the little green arrow pointing nose up. And I want the power off here to keep that flight path towards the ground. If we just pull the stick back without taking power off, I'm obviously going to climb. Okay, we'll just keep the nose wheel off, applying power. Once it bites, we're off. Gear travels 200 knots. Come back to 90. Let's take her back up to 1500 feet, and we'll keep less than 300. Let's turn. Right, the rollout heading I think was okay, our spacing was okay. What I didn't do, or what I did wrong, was I turned in much too slack. I didn't get enough turn on at the start of the turn. Okay, so I need to get back pressure to get that flight path marker, to get the AOA staple up to the flight path marker. In effect. Okay, so rolling out, pointing at my 3 legs, below 300, gear travels. Let's get 1500 feet. Let's get the speed back to something sensible. Okay, so on approach, remember our stick is for speed, or AOA. AOA is probably the best way to think about it, because that's what we're flying. And the throttle is for rate of descent, or altitude. Okay, we're turning in there, so get the turn on, let the nose drop, get some back pressure. Okay, and now we've got the flight path marker nailed in the top of the AOA bracket. Rarely will you be doing stick or throttle on their own. One often complements the other. But you want to adjust your speed first, and then make a positive change in your throttle. Before I roll out here, I'm going to reduce the power because I am going to reduce drag as soon as I stop my turn. This looks much nicer. Rolling out at 300. Staple's in a good place. We're going to add a little bit of power to bring the flight path marker up to our dotted line, and then we're just going to add a little bit of back pressure and adjust the power to keep it there. A little bit of back pressure just to get the AOA stable to come up. Just as we flare, we can go idle, speed brakes. I'm going to roll speed brakes in, max dry. Bites, airborne, gear travels. We'll do one more like that, and then we will have a look at the run and brake. Okay, sitting 90. Let's climb at 250, and let's turn down wind. So turning was much better on that one. Spacing was good, and the rollout was better. See if I can nail 1500 feet this time without ballooning past it. Looking for my rollout features. Nope. Okay, less than 300 gear travels. Three greens eventually. Okay, so that's good. Turning in there, let the nose drop. Get a little bit of back pressure on the stick. Get the flight path marker on the top of the stable. And you want 4 to 5 degrees nose down. Looking for just less than 1,000 halfway around. Maybe a little bit high, so I'm going to take a little bit of power off. I want to keep back pressure on, otherwise my speed's going to climb. So keep that staple just butting up to the wing on my flight path marker. Okay, I don't want it to sink low, so I'm going to add a bit of power on and then take it off again as soon as I reduce angle of bank.
Bingo! Bingo!
I will sort it out when I roll. So I'm just increasing the stick here just to get the airway to come up, and I'm reducing the power at the same time. What we do not want to do is just dive in towards the runway with no power on the aircraft. Alright, idle, speed brake in, power coming on. Gear travels. Reset that warning. Right, let's take it out to initials, look at a run in and brake. So with a run in and brake, all we're doing is getting ourselves from a fighting speed into that final approach configuration. And all we're going to do is try and fly the same final air track, and we're going to join it as early as we can, basically. So normally your run and brake altitude might be 500 feet at most airfields, most sensible airfields. An exception I can think of, Gibraltar, where it was as low as you wanted to go. Well, sorry, 100 feet, but if you didn't have a rad alt, it was as low as you wanted to go, which was a situation we found there in the Hawk. Otherwise, you're coming in lower and idle, air brake, hard turn. You're relying on that hard turn to reduce most of your speed. And then you're climbing up to nominally your second altitude, although you don't have to, and then you're going to intercept that that turn on finals. So you're going to put yourself on late downwind or onto the finals turn. You're going to try and fly the same track through the air. Your speed's just going to be a lot higher initially, and it's going to be washing off. Anticipate when it's going to intercept what you practiced on the circuits, and just bring the power up at that stage, and then just fly it like a normal circuit.
Altitude. Altitude.
So we'll brake about a third of the way down the runway, 400 to 450 for us from around 200 feet. Should say the overhead brake's a much more useful way than a straight ins to bring a formation back as well. All you do is delay the brake between the individuals. If you're number 2 or number 3, then put the aircraft ahead of you onto the horizon so you all look to be the same. So anybody on the ground looking sees a nice tidy formation in the circuit rather than all different altitudes. and follow the aircraft in front. So about 200 feet here, that'll come down quite a bit once we come up this little rise, approach to the field. Idle, air brake, hard brake, climbing turn. All we're looking to do here is to intercept our previous track, so looking for a downwind roll like cues with those two lakes with the third one past it. So we'll get there. We're not quite up to 1500 feet, but that doesn't really matter. We're below 300 knots. The gear travels, speed brake travels in. We're going to bring the power up here. We're roughly abeam our normal tip in. So we want to turn 45 degrees nose down. Flight path marker on the top of the staple. Keep the turn coming, otherwise we're not going to get around the corner. If you need to use bait around final, then do. What all I'm doing here is trying to intercept the flight path. Ended up high for the first part. So I want my dotted line to be over my touchdown point. And then I'm going to raise the flight path marker to it. And then I'm going to keep increasing back pressure on the stick to bring the speed back, bring the staple back. Increasing power to hold it there. Idle, speed brake. Land. There's 100 knots, lowering the nose wheel. And we'll come off at the Timmy hangar. Right, so as I say, the F16 is probably the most tricky, I think, of the jets to land nicely on the circuit, because it's fairly slick, it's fairly pointy. Flies a bit faster around finals, doesn't really want to turn if it gets slow, and it's got a narrow undercarriage. So I would recommend using a trainer, but otherwise say give yourself heights, give yourself speeds to look at, critique your circuits and try and improve on them as you go through. Those are far from perfect, plenty to work on. But improving on each one, which is what you want. It is a useful exercise to do. Come back and multiplayer circuit or multiplayer server, and circuits clear. You can always do a couple at the end if you got the fuel. Otherwise, set up a single player mission. All right, thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.